My first question will be that in Britain you have been able to have a wider audience within the politicians and the public opinion and even the media than in the rest of the European continent. How come? How was it possible?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I have been an activist in health for well over a decade, and I've had relationships with many different media outlets, mainstream media, journalists, BBC, all of those. So I've got that network that I built up. Getting this story out specifically on the issues around the vaccines and mandates was not that easy, although there was initially some good reporting on that. But you have to keep fighting. Sometimes it takes 10 attempts before you get one media pickup. So for me, I'm just relentless and tenacious when it comes to making the injustice visible, because as you know, one of the most important ways to change the system is to make that injustice visible to people through mainstream media. So for me, I know how to get stories out there. I mean, but that's still very hard.
Yes, but I want to tell you that I'm a journalist myself for now almost 40 years, and I know all my colleagues were totally hypnotized by the system and totally unable to listen to do this.
I think many people are in the same place, but I think incrementally there were ways of subtly getting more of the stories out over time. So even though there were people very indoctrinated at the beginning that this was a very safe and effective vaccine, that of course now has been debunked completely.
And it seems that also in England you had more accurate statistics on the
yeah, and that's a very good point. I think I think there's been problems in England as well with censorship, but I think compared to other parts of the world, I think the stats have been much more open and accessible. Not easy to interpret always, but more accessible.
And was it also the Telegraph who made this investigation on the government's manipulation of the health minister?
Yeah, I actually know the journalist Isabel Oakeshott, so she was able to get hold of secret WhatsApp messages between Matt Hancock and other senior ministers saying that at the beginning of the pandemic, the plan was to frighten the pants off the public. So there was a deliberate attempt to scare people as much as possible to make them more compliant, basically.
Yeah. So this seems mission impossible to find journalists able to do that in the...
Almost mission impossible, but not, I'm very happy to take on those mission impossible, so...
Okay, congratulations anyway.
But listen, it's a group effort in terms of, everybody's doing their bit. And I think if we all step up and try and do the best we can with the resources we have, we will win this battle.
Yeah. So let's talk about the WHO process. What are the main dangers you see in this process, and how can we revert?
Yeah, I think the problem is the WHO, when it was set up with very noble principles. It was set up on the background of the end of the Second World War, and based upon three principles that were supposed to be a counter to centuries of colonialism, both North American colonialism, US colonialism, and of course it reached its peak in terms of the horrific nature of how man exploits other man in Nazi Germany. And because of that, the World Health Organization was set up under the principles of every country should be independent, every human being is equal, and more than anything else, individual autonomy is paramount for a good society. And that was great, and I think it functioned very well for decades. But because of political policies that extended the reach and the power of corporate capitalism, there was defunding going on of the World Health Organization. By 2000, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as soon as they were formed, started to fund the World Health Organization. But their primary interest is to make money from pharmaceutical products or from even food, like junk food. This is what Bill Gates invests in. So as soon as commercial influence comes into decision-making about health, then that independence goes. And we've seen that in the most extreme form during the pandemic. Most of the funding, even Margaret Chan, the former Director General, said 70% of the funding of the World Health Organization comes with strings attached. So they cannot be trusted. Let's just be very clear. They cannot and should not be trusted on any health advice until they remove commercial influence. It is a moral obligation for every citizen to disobey unjust laws. Martin Luther King taught us that, Gandhi taught us that, Mandela taught us that. Therefore, we still have the power. We have to utilize it. Always do not comply. We should not comply. That's very straightforward.
When you give this cry out, do you think that the people will listen to that?
I think people already are listening. I mean, if you look at what happened with the COVID vaccines, certainly the UK and the US, I don't know other countries, but people are refusing to have boosters even though they've been recommended it. So that is a sign that people are not trusting, they're not complying. People are not complying.
They want to fight disinformation, infodemics, how they call it.
Yeah. One of the old rules of the KGB, always accuse your enemy of exactly what you were doing. The World Health Organization are responsible for disinformation. Big Pharma are responsible for disinformation. So they're trying to distract from themselves by accusing the people who want the truth as spreading disinformation. It's actually part of the corporate playbook. It's a classic tactic adopted by big corporations. It's called opposition fragmentation. It's directly attacking and smearing those who are exposing the truth. This is what they do. So people need to understand those structures in place, and we have to keep exposing it.
And about your personal approach to medicine as a doctor, have you been since the beginning of your career doubtful about vaccines and modern technology?
No, I have a healthy skepticism about any new drug now, because I've realized throughout my career that we can't trust anything that comes from the pharmaceutical industry's mouth. That's the first step, right? Nothing. Do not trust anything they say. So I think across all drugs there's a big issue about the way that information is conveyed about benefits and harms. Exaggerated safety and benefits essentially come from the drug industry to make money. So we start from that position. I still have a general support with the evidence that I have seen, although I know there are concerns about traditional vaccines. But if you compare them to all the drugs, all the interventions we do in medicine, they're still amongst the safest. Of course, this was rolled out very, very quickly and there are problems with it. But what's most important is in true informed consent. So let's say there is a 1 in a million chance of a severe adverse event from a vaccine or a drug. The patient should be told that and they make a decision. They take that chance. But as long as that information is accurate, the problem is that information being given to patients is inaccurate. The harms are deliberately underplayed and the benefits are exaggerated.
And the pandemics has shown, and also all what our governments did to face these pandemics, has shown that there is only one type of medicine that is privileged. It's like the party, the ruling party in the communist countries in the past is a ruling medicine, and all the others, in French we say parti unique, all the others medicines are considered as a superstition.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that. It's an extension of colonialism. Yeah. So the modern medical model actually is rooted in colonial thinking. We know better, and therefore we're going to suppress information about ancient healing arts or alternative medicines. And actually so what we are seeing now is a re-emergence of colonial thinking and structures. Authoritarianism. People need to understand that we've gone through this in history before, but this is now the corporates are really the new colonialists.
Yes, exactly. And do you think that that will be the last question? Among the medical profession, there is a movement, there is an upsurge to counter this trend.
Yeah, I think it's growing. I was involved in a campaign with the medical Royal Colleges that represents every doctor in the UK in 2015 to wind back the harm to too much medicine. But so there is definitely an awareness, but it needs people to lead and carry on that movement. Campaigns aren't won overnight. They can take years, decades sometimes, right? So I think the most important thing is we keep moving forward, we keep having hope. Pessimism is surrender and despair is defeat.